You're listening to the Epic Success Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shannon Irvin. And today, only listen in if you are an entrepreneur that actually wants to use your knowledge and your influence to transform people's lives. If that's not you, tune out, because today we have the master of Tribe, Stu McLaren, with us today, talking all about how he teaches people to do just that. He has been teaching entrepreneurs for a long time now how to transform their knowledge and their influence into reoccurring revenue through a membership model. But not just that, through really defining what it means to be low stress and high profit. And that's so countercultural to the online space right now. And Stu is doing it in such an amazing way. And one of the things that I love about Stu and that we share in common is he not only is out there to make a profit, make a difference in people's lives, but he also uses that to make a huge impact in the world. You know, for those of you who listen to my podcast, you know I'm a founder of a nonprofit in Uganda, helping AIDS orphans there. Stu has founded his own nonprofit as well called World Teacher Aid, and he is helping to change the face of education in places that are internally displaced. So we'll chat about that. So he's making a huge impact around the world and also teaching us entrepreneurs how to make a legacy impact in the businesses that we have out there online. Originally, you might know him from Wishlist Member. He's the Wishlist Member. He's the co-founder of that. And now he is teaching entrepreneurs all across the world how to get their voice and their vision out there and serve their tribe. Stu, thanks for coming on to the podcast today.
Buddy, that was quite the intro. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So by chance, if somebody hasn't met you, Stu, I would love for you to kind of rewind the tape a little bit and tell us what got you into this online space when you were starting the Wishlist Member. What got you so attracted to serving in this way?
Well, my long story short is that I had a business model originally where I had clients, and I loved my clients. It was a very profitable business, but the problem was that I couldn't scale it because the only way that I could grow was to give more of my time, and I didn't have any more time to give. And so that planted a seed of, it planted a question of how can I grow the business without it requiring more of my time? And that ultimately led me to wanting to learn more about membership sites. Now, at the time, this was back in 2008, so I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, but that was back in 2008. But I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and I was trying to start my own membership site, and it just wasn't coming together. I'm not super technical, I'm not a programmer. I mean, I'm comfortable online and stuff, but there was all kinds of technical things that were holding me back. And I was complaining to my friend about it. And he said, well, why don't you just start your own membership platform? And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I said, his name was Tracy. I was like, Tracy, obviously you didn't hear what I said. I'm not technical. How can I create, my own software solution if I'm not technical? And he said, well, why don't we team up together? He's like, look, I've got a really great programmer that works with me. He's like, you got a clear vision of what you want. And so we did. And that was the beginning of Wishlist Member.
Wow.
And so my role in that company was to be the dummy, the guy that was using it. And so that we made sure it was user friendly and all that kind of stuff. And the team kind of joked, if Stu can use it, then everybody can use it. And then, so it was we had a great partnership because he handled the technical and the operations of the company. I handled the marketing and the user experience. And we grew that company really quickly from 0 to 60,000 plus online communities and membership sites that software powered in just a few short years.
Wow.
And through that, I got to interact with literally tens of thousands of membership site owners in all kinds of markets, from pets and health and fitness to photography and art to religion and to business and everything in between. Right. There was literally membership sites for all kinds of different markets. And I started to see patterns. I started to see patterns of like what was working and what was not working. And there was a small group of membership site owners whose sites were growing like exponentially, high 6-figure, 7-figure, even 8-figure. And when I started to pay attention to what they were doing, I started to notice that they were doing things a little bit different than everybody else. And that's where my curiosity began. And that's where I started diving deep and just really understanding what was making them produce better results than everybody else. And so that's kind of what's led me to where I am today, because ultimately I sold my interest in Wishlist Member, and I was just I had a passion for putting what I had learned to practice. I partnered with New York Times bestselling author Michael Hyatt. We launched a membership site called Platform University, and everything I learned worked. That site took off. We went from 1,100 members in the first week to 2,500 members in the first year, to 4,500 in the second year, 6,000 in the third year, and it just kept growing. And people started asking, like, how are you doing this?
Right.
And that's when I started sharing all that I know about membership sites with everybody else through Tribe.
You know, and I promise you guys, I'm going to ask him what were those things that works, and we're going to get into that. But one of the things that I love about you, Stu, that makes you just really stand out amongst all of the people that are teaching ways to market online is just this. And you can see it in the background, like right now you're hanging out in Costa Rica in the winter. You have this real strong philosophy of not hustling till your eyes bleed, like working and having freedom and living life. Like where did that, was that always part of your DNA? Is that just who you are naturally, or is that something that you had to work toward as you got into this business?
Well, I don't think it was always natural, but I think it came about, if I look back and try to trace back to where was its origins. I think when I was in my like early teenage years, I started to ask some different types of questions, because my parents are two of the hardest working people you will ever find.
Yeah.
You know, so my dad, he's ever since I can remember, he's worked 2 full-time jobs. He worked from 9 to 3 in a high school with kids with special needs, and then 4 nights a week he would work 8 at night till 8 in the morning in a group home with people with special needs.
Oh my goodness.
And so like he worked all the time, and yet he was at every, soccer game, a basketball game, and badminton tournament. Like, I don't know when he slept, but my mom was the same way. She worked, in a elementary school with kids with autism from 9 to 3. And then 3 nights a week, she would work in a fine dining restaurant. And so like, I don't know any other person who worked any harder than my parents.
Wow.
But when I was in those early teenage years, I started to realize that hard work doesn't necessarily produce financial results, because we were never financially free, or we never had a lot of money. Like, we always had enough to get by, but we were always penny pinching. And so I started to realize then that hard work wasn't necessarily the answer. So that was probably the first seed. Then later on, much later on in life, when I was about to get married, this was actually when I transitioned from, that consulting business that I had to wanting to start a membership site, because I was hustling all the time in the consulting business. I was on call all the time, and I didn't like it. Yeah. And then when I was about to get married, I was like, when am I going to have time to build the relationship with my wife? Exactly. And so that was the next step. And then I would say definitely the third one was when we had our first child. That was a game changer for me, because I just realized, look, these years are so precious. We only have a few of them when they're young and when they're, kids. And I didn't want their memories of their childhood to be, oh, my dad was always working, or he was always gone to this conference, or he was always at the office. That's not what I wanted their memory to be like. I wanted their memories to be, us hanging out, playing, and, exploring and going on adventures and trying new things and all that kind of stuff. And so that was when Amy and I made a commitment to really design whatever business that we are creating in such a way that gives us that kind of freedom to be able to spend time with those that matter most.
Man, and I think you just hit it on the head, for the listeners that do have, you get married and then you have kids, and then all those layers, you start to see like the scales come off your eyes. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so short. My son just turned 10 and I'm like doing the math, 8 more years. Like, that's it. And I'm
it's
like,
crazy, right?
Oh, yeah. Make every moment count. And as an entrepreneur, and especially as a driven entrepreneur, which I know you are, Stu, it can be a challenge. It's a tug of war between the things that you love. Like, I love my children like life, but I love serving in my business similarly. And it's a quite a pull,
Yeah. And it never gets easier. In fact, it only gets harder, because the more success you experience, the more opportunities come your way. And those opportunities are exciting, and they light you up. And, when you are a driven entrepreneur, you're like, yes, like, this is amazing. This is like everything that I've wanted. But there's everything that you say yes to, inherently, you're also saying no to something else. And so you just got to be aware of that, and you just got to have the priorities clear. And, and it's not to say that, like, hustling your face off 24/7 is a bad thing. For some people, that's their priority, and that's, right. That's their thing. Right. But I think it's more just about getting clear on what is your priority, and then just holding that front and center and just sticking to it.
Okay, so you're hanging out with your buddy Michael Hyatt. He's wanting to launch Platform University. I'm in that community. I've seen the beauty of what a well-oiled machine that is, and it's beautiful. What were the things that you were seeing in all that testing that you applied in, and then of course you've applied to so many entrepreneurs' lives since then to really help it become the success it is?
Yeah, well, there was a number of very counterintuitive strategies as it related to membership sites that made these few really succeed. One of them had to do with the number one reason why people leave or cancel a membership. And that was, it didn't matter what industry or what market, 9 times out of 10, and this the 9 times out of 10 doesn't come from an academic study, but it's just in general. The vast majority of people are leaving because of overwhelm, meaning it's not that the content isn't producing value for them, it's just that they can't keep up. And as soon as they have a seed of doubt that they can't keep up, it's a matter of time before they leave. So here's the thing that I want your listeners to really remember and hammer home. The value of a membership does not come from the volume of information you provide. Wow. The value of the membership comes from the speed of which people can implement the information you provide. So it's not about volume, it's about implementation. And so this was one of the big, ahas, was that the membership sites that were doing really well were actually providing far less content. And that's totally counterintuitive to what most of us would think. We would think like, man, I just want to give and give and give. I want to give as much information as I possibly can because that's where the value is. That's not where the value comes from. The value comes from the speed of which people can implement it. And so that was a totally counterintuitive mindset and approach to the content within the membership. So that was one big one. Wow, I would say another big one was as it related to the way membership sites were marketed. So again, and I raised my hand because I fell into this, not trap, but I took this approach as well. But normally we would think like, okay, if I'm going to sell a membership, I need to be open 24/7. So I'm open all the time. People can join whenever. But here's the reality. The sites that succeeded and did really, really well, they actually closed their doors and they only opened a few times a year. And it's counterintuitive. Like, why would you close your membership if you're wanting to grow it? But the reality of it is that when you are open all the time, most people don't have a reason for their visitors to buy today or to join the membership site today. And what happens is people will come and they'll look at it and they'll go, oh, this looks awesome. I'll save this for later. And so later is the kiss of death for all of us entrepreneurs.
So true.
Yeah, because
you're like, no.
Exactly, because they're not going to remember to come back. They've got 1,000,001 other things going on. Like it's so funny on my phone. I have. I was showing a friend of mine the other day on my phone on my Instagram account. I have this thing called marketing. And it's like all products that I see on Instagram that ads that are popping up that I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. I'll save this for later. And I've got this whole like folder of all these products that I want to buy, but I haven't gotten around to. And this is what happens like when you are open all the time. If you don't have a reason for people to buy today, they're not going to. Yeah. And so to flip that completely on its head, one of the things that from a marketing standpoint that these successful sites would do is that they would actually close their doors and they would only open a few times a year. And so what happened was that when they opened, there was this huge sense of urgency to get in before they closed again. And there was a definitive deadline by which people had to act. That deadline in and of itself drove people to take action. And so what would happen was that they would see huge spikes in registration, and then they'd hold steady, and then a huge spike. And so their growth curve looked a lot like a staircase. Okay. And so again, that was another one of those counterintuitive strategies that was totally different than what most people were doing.
So I love that, because I think what you described is exactly what keeps people from starting memberships. They think I can't have enough, I don't have enough content, and I don't know how to do this marketing thing. Like how do I even start? So like, as you're taking somebody, because now I know you have this amazing community called Tribe, and you guys are going to be hearing a lot about it, because if this is something that would serve your audience well, to have, Stu, you say it best, it's, where a course is kind of like, it's informational, memberships take it to what level?
So the distinction between a course and a membership is that a course goes deep. Yeah. So you go deep and you go deep fast. But the reality of it is that on the back end of that, people need some ongoing support, encouragement, and reminders of how to implement what they're learning. So for example, like think of it like you're wanting to learn the guitar for the very first time. And so you go to a weekend course. And so you learn a whole bunch of stuff in a very short period of time. But when you come out of that course, does that mean that you've mastered the guitar? Yeah. Not at all. You still need that ongoing practice. You still need that ongoing support and encouragement. And that's exactly what a membership provides. So that distinction between like going deep, that's for a course. But that ongoing mastery, that's for a membership site.
And the memberships sites, and you mentioned it, they go across like, there's so many genres of business. What are some of the craziest ones that you've seen just explode using this model?
Well, they're in all kinds of different markets. Like one of them in the dog training market. So I have a number of clients, believe it or not, that are in the dog training market. Some are even within a niche in a niche, like Susan Garrett. She runs a very successful membership with thousands of members, not in the dog training, but in the dog agility market, which is like a sub-niche of a sub-niche, you know? And so she's doing phenomenally well. Then we've got people in the photography niche. We've got people, there was one membership site I remember from years ago. There was a membership site for families going to Disney World. So it was just like how to get the most out of your Disney experience. And then there was a membership site for people who were looking to improve their clothing and style. And coaching, it was actually coaching men through, dressing better and looking better. We've seen sites in jewelry markets and for dance studio owners. We've seen membership sites for in all kinds of different business topics, like you name it, there's a membership site for it. We've seen them in the do-it-yourself market. And I've seen one of my clients, Nicholas Wilton, he launched a membership site for artists, doing phenomenally well. In calligraphy, we could go on and on, but there's literally membership sites in all kinds of different markets. The reality of it is that if you're in a market where people are wanting to learn something, that's a huge, very good sign. Number two, if you're in a market where people love to get together and congregate, so like if you see different Facebook groups forming around a subject area, that's another really good, healthy sign. Or if you are in a market where it's very kind of niche oriented, where I come from a very small town out in the middle of nowhere, just south of Toronto, and if I were to talk about marketing online, I'd be like the only one that would be talking about it.
Right.
But like online, it's so great because we can connect with so many people who have the shared interest. And so if you're in a market like that where, you know, the subject matter is nuanced or it's very niche, where if you were in your own little town, probably nobody else would know what you're talking about. But online, the others would. That's another great sign. And so it can really be applied in all kinds of different markets, and that's what we're seeing happen.
So in the online space, there's a lot of people teaching online marketing, so to speak. And one of the things I hear a lot from my listeners, they'll reach out to me. They're like, am I too late to the party? Like, I've got this, and you and I know we're on the same page on this. Like, everybody has their own voice, their vision, their special thing that's God-given, and it needs to get out to the world. But there's this fear that I've already missed out, or there's no way I could actually make a mark in this way and serve in this way, and it's just too late. What are your thoughts? How do you coach people through that thought process?
Well, I think the reality of it is that we compare ourselves to, you know, others, and I think that's the biggest mistake of all. You know, when, you know, you look at somebody who's maybe been doing this for, you know, years and years and years, and you think, oh, I'm not where they are, so, you know, therefore I don't have value to bring. And that's just not the truth. Here's the reality of the situation. I always tell people, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And the reason I share that is because where so many people get value and they really appreciate is when you're like one step ahead of where they are right now. It's like when you have just gone through what they are hoping to go through, like that first big step, you know, toward that ultimate transformation. That's where so much value comes from. So the thing that I would say to everybody is, no, you haven't missed the boat. Whether you, you know, are an established expert or perhaps you are in the early stages of growing your business, you absolutely haven't missed the boat, because the reality of it is that there are so many people online, and we all learn from different people in different ways.
Yes.
And everybody has their own perspective, their own lens, their own experience that they bring. And the way that I share something is going to be different than the way you share it, Shannon. And it's going to be different than the way Fred or Sally or Susie shares it. And what happens is that when different people share their experience, it lands in a different way. And that, you know, resonates. And then that's when people open up, and that's when they begin learning. And so to me, it's just, this is the most exciting time ever to be, you know, in business, because there's so much opportunity and there's so many people coming online and so many people that are already online, and we can really go deep in whatever interests that we have. And that's what's fun for me.
So much fun. Oh my gosh. So I know the Tribe workshop's coming up, I think the 15th of this month of March, right?
Yes.
Tell my listeners and tell me a little bit about what somebody's going to experience in that process, because I know I've got a ton of people have been talking to me about memberships, and they're thinking about it and thinking about getting started. So let us know what that experience is like.
Yeah, the Tribe workshop I'm ridiculously proud of. You know, like we had a gentleman who sent in like a debrief of a launch that he did based on this free workshop that's coming up. So long story short, like, he basically took the free information and applied it and got tremendous results. And he was in a psychotherapy market. So he helps psychotherapists.
Okay.
But anyway, long story short, it's a 3-part workshop. And in the first part, we talk about how to identify whether your market is a good fit for a membership site. Okay. And there are 3 market characteristics that we look for, and we go deep on each of them. And we talk about like how to identify them for your market and what signs to look for. And we walk through that particular process, because understanding the nuances of what makes a good market for a membership site is really important, because some markets is not going to make sense, but for the vast majority, they will, but you want to understand why. And so that's why we talk about it in the first part of the workshop.
Okay.
Second part of the workshop, we start making progress toward you laying out your strategy for your membership. And as we talked about at the beginning of the call, one of the big strategies, the counterintuitive strategies, was how people structured their content inside of a membership site. That is critically important. So in that second part of the workshop, that's what we focus on. We walk through creating your, what I call, success path. And once you've got this serves as the basis for not only all your content within the membership, but also how you're going to market the membership.
Wow.
And so that's the second part of the workshop. The third part of the workshop, we just kind of open the, pull the curtains back, and we give you the whole blueprint for a successful membership site. And there are 5 big areas that you're going to want to focus on. And we talk about each of them. And this is not only to, when it comes to thinking about the type of site that you're going to create, or the content you're going to create within the site, but also how you market the site. And then most importantly, once you've got members, how do you keep them happy? Like, this is one of those areas that doesn't get talked about as it relates to membership sites.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that the money is made in keeping people happy. That's why I love this business model, by the way. Like, isn't that just a beautiful measuring stick? Like, we get rewarded based on our ability to keep people happy.
It's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. And so we talk about that in the third part of the workshop. We outline the whole blueprint, and there's an awesome PDF that, goes into granular detail about all of these things that people will get as well. It's all part of the free workshop.
So basically, somebody who's got this seed of an idea that I think this might work can take this workshop and literally have the blueprint at the end on getting their baby launch, so to speak.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, we've had a number of people who have done that. Like, there was this other woman, Thembi, she was over in Africa. She watched the entire free workshop. And cool. Again, on the back end of that, launched her own membership site. So for me, like we were talking before we, started recording, how I get lit up by the stories of people who are able to take this, apply it, and start rolling out their membership sites in their different markets. That's what I live for. And we got tons of great stories and examples that you'll hear from all throughout the workshop, just showing you how other people are doing it and applying it in their different markets.
And, I love this because as not just an online entrepreneur, but also somebody who runs a nonprofit, like I can see so many applications for both sides. So it really isn't, just a finite, like just online marketers can use this. This is really so deep and so impactful.
Yeah, and there are tons of examples of nonprofits who do use this. Like, in our tribe community, there's Scott Paley. Scott Paley, he has a membership site with thousands of nonprofits who he helps, in that way. And then there's also like a few months ago, we had one of the big charities that we've all probably heard of, Charity Water. They came to the mastermind, and their whole reason that they were there was they wanted to learn how to create a subscription model for their charity. And the reality of it is that if we run nonprofits, we don't just want a donor to donate one time. The best, most perfect donor is somebody who's donating all the time on a regular basis. Yeah. That's subscription, people. It applies to every market. And that's why I get passionate about it.
I love it. And I want to circle back, but I have to ask this question because, you aren't the typical guy online. You took all the energy and love and passion you have for your students, which you do. It just exudes from you. But you did take it overseas to make an impact with your nonprofit. Can you take a few minutes and tell us about that, the impact it's making? I want to broaden people's minds because we get so focused on growing the business, and watching somebody like you, Stu, and myself and others who take it out and make an impact in lives that don't have this opportunity. It's pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, well, I got to give the credit to my wife, Amy. She has always, yes, she's always, traveled on the off beaten path, if you will. And she told me early on when we got married, she said, you'll never, like I always gave, like I always wrote a check to different charities. Like I was always philanthropic in that regard. But she said to me, like, you'll never really understand the true impact that you're able to have until you actually go and see the people that you're giving to. And so the very first time that we went to Kenya in particular, long story short, we had begun the early stages of our nonprofit. And Amy was determined to build a school. And I was like, okay, so we go to this community. We're there with the person that we work with in Kenya. Her name was Irene. We call her like the Mother Teresa of Africa. She's amazing. But anyway, so she helps us identify these communities in need. So we're meeting this community, and she said, like, this is a community that could really benefit from a school. And so I'm there, and I'm trying to figure out, like, how much things cost and, like, how we're going to do this. And long story short, I'm talking to the chairman of this community, and I said, how much does it cost to fund the full-time salary of a teacher.
Right.
And he said, he thought for a minute, he said, it's about $100 a month. And in that moment, like I had this light bulb moment because that's when I was selling our software, which was Wishlist Member.
Yeah.
And it sold for essentially it was sold for $97 for a single site license. And I made this connection. I was like, wow, like if I sell one more license of Wishlist Member per month and I just allocate that to funding the salary of a teacher, like think of the ripple effect that could have.
Huge.
But then the real light bulb moment went off, which was like, well, wait a minute. Like, what if I make a whole lot more money and I dedicate a whole lot more to the cause? Like, then imagine the impact that we could have.
Yeah.
And that moment is a big turning moment for me. Like, that was the moment when I stopped feeling guilty on a subconscious level for making money and started to realize that making money was a very honorable thing. And it not only that, but it gave me a tremendous opportunity to be able to have a huge impact in the lives of so many people. And so I love making money. Like now I don't apologize about it. I love making money because I realize the more money I make, the more impact I can have. And so now running a nonprofit, and I'm sure you experience this too, money is the lifeblood of change. It's the lifeblood of progress. Like we can only volunteer so many hours in a day, but there's an unlimited number of dollar bills, if you will, that we can give and contribute that can have an impact. And so that's why I love making money. It provides a ton of leverage and allows us to have a massive, massive impact.
I love that so much because it just shows that we limit ourselves. We limit, the possibilities of our impact here online, and then the impact that it can have and the empowerment that it can have. Because I know that you and Amy have experienced this. Some of the most brilliant people I have met to date are living in the little camps in Africa where we work, and they're amazing, industrious, entrepreneurial people. And to be able to empower them to change their communities, it's pretty cool. And this is what I adore about the whole concept of memberships, but not your traditional way of doing it. And that's what you hit in the beginning is this. I've been in those memberships, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm excited. And you get in and you're like, the fire hose hits you, right? And you're just like,
totally.
Oh my gosh, I am so inadequate. I can't do this. Forget about it,
Totally. Yeah.
And that's never been your, in your particular membership, you dive in, you really have this kind of nurturing, hand-holding, walk you through the steps kind of process, which is how we process as human beings. And
I think, truthfully, Shannon, it comes from the fact that I'm just a very simple guy. I'm not I was joking with a friend of mine earlier because, she's like exceptionally brilliant. She is like, I don't know what her IQ is, but she just operates on a whole different level. And I always have to take what she says and like really break it down into simple, like layman's terms. And it's just, I think because I learn in such a very simple way, and I try to do that myself when I'm teaching, is like really just break it down into, what's the step-by-step, like the nuts and bolts, so that there's clarity around, okay, here's where I am, here's what I need to do next in order to make progress toward this X goal. Right. And so, for me, it's more because that's just how my brain works. It's just very, very simple in nature.
Okay, then we can be related. So that's a beautiful thing. I always talk about how process and processes are like my best friend, not because I'm all that organized, but because then it gives me a roadmap so I don't mess up somewhere down the road.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. Let me, before I let you go, because I'm going to honor your time here, but you've been online for a while. You've gone through the bumps and the bruises and the successes, and you've lived all of that. Share with my listeners one of the big roadblocks you've come up against where you maybe didn't think that it just almost become impossible, and how that was overcome.
Yeah, listen, a friend of mine, Barry Baumgartner, she said it best. She said, new level, new devil. And what she meant by that was that every level that we get to in our business and our career, we're going to face a whole different set of circumstances. Yeah. We always think that like, okay, once I get to this level, or once I make this amount of money, or once my business has a team, or once I am able to sell this or that, everything's going to be so much better and everything's going to be so much easier.
Right.
But the reality of it is that like where you are now is equipping you for where you're going to be. And then the challenges that you face then are going to equip you for your next level of success. and so the challenges never stop. It's just our ability to be able to keep moving forward. And this past weekend, it was like one of as a parent, it was like one of the most rewarding experiences I've had with my kids, because we're in Costa Rica and we took the kids ziplining. And my kids are, my daughter is 6 and my son just turned 4. And so we're high up in the trees. Yeah. And, I was sharing stories with them before we went ziplining. I was talking about being brave and having courage and all this kind of stuff, hoping that like on a subconscious level, these messages were landing so that, they would want to go ziplining. And so we get up into the trees and my daughter, she was fearless right from the get-go. She was just like, yes, she was just buckled her in and boom, away she went. My son, he was a little bit nervous, but he saw his sister going and we were encouraging him. So the first few times he was a little nervous, but he did it. And then after that, he was just like, he was on fire. Like, this new level of confidence had grown. And then partway through the ziplining, there was this thing called the Tarzan swing. And I just want you to imagine like this huge, like, canyon. And basically they hook you up into this, like on this rope, and then you basically drop and you just swing right out. Like, truthfully, I was very nervous about this myself. But we said to the kids, like, who wants to go on it? And my daughter's like, I want to. She wanted to go first. She was in. So they buckled her in and they let her go. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this thing is serious. But she just like, whoa, she swung out and she was having the time of her life. And they brought her down. And then it was my turn to go, and I went. And like I said, it was a lot more of a stomach twister than I thought it was going to be. But I didn't think that my son was going to do it because it was a big, huge task. But anyway, so I finished mine, and I look up and my wife's like, Sam wants to go. And I was like, okay, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Wow. Yeah. So they buckle him in, and he did it with like a guide, and he swung, and I could see him like, as he was swinging, his face was just like, like he was just freaking out. But then when they unbuckled him, when he finished, you could see this like new level of confidence. Like, yeah, like I can do this. Like it was like subconsciously, they both realized like they were capable of so much more than they ever thought. And so when I think of like roadblocks for all of us, I think of my kids. Like we all face roadblocks, and it's more about the mental game than it is about anything as it relates to strategies or tactics or anything of that stuff. It's all about like having the resilience to be able to face a problem or challenge and keep pushing forward. And listen, I've faced all kinds of them. When we were running our Wishlist member company, our lead programmer, our only programmer, decided that he wanted to leave 10 months into our company. And our company was just like completely taken off. And he was so inspired by what we had done. He came to us, he's like, look, guys, I love you. But I've been really inspired and I want to go and start my own software company. Well, that left us in a huge, like gaping hole. And we had to figure out how to come through that.
Yeah.
And we did. And long story short, we found a way, and we came through the other side of that. But that was a challenging time. Like when launches don't go well, those happen. And you got to be able to pick yourself back up. You got to be able to pick your team back up if you got a team. And every level that we get to, we face different sets of challenges. But more often than not, it's our ability to maintain our resilience and to be able to keep pushing forward and to face that fear and keep moving. And so just like my kids on the zip lines, one of the reasons I was so excited to take them on that is because every year I do high adrenaline activities to push myself. Yeah. It's not that I necessarily enjoy them, but it's to feel fear and to push forward anyway. And my kids felt it on the zip lines. I felt it on the zip lines. But it's those kinds of things that I think we've all got to do, because we will face challenges. We will face things that will bring into question whether we want to move forward. And we've just got to face it, deal with it, and keep moving. And I think that more than anything as entrepreneurs, that's just the reality of what we were signing up for. It doesn't become a perfect, scenario where everything just works according to plan. It's just our ability to be able to move forward and keep pushing forward.
Keep getting to that next level. And of course, we're going to put the links in the show notes and everywhere. You guys are going to be hearing about Stu in this workshop, because I really know so many of my listeners in my tribe have been talking to me about this, and they know, if you're listening to this and you're like, you've got that thing in your heart and your spirit that's just saying, oh my gosh, this is totally, they're speaking to me. Yeah, we are. And it's your time. And don't let it be next year where you're sitting around and you still have that dream and it's dying in your heart. Like, get that voice and that vision out there. And Stu is going to help you literally hold your hand through this workshop. It's the coolest workshop of all.
And can I speak to that for a second, Shannon? Because oftentimes people think, well, I've got to have a big audience in order to launch a membership site.
Right.
And what you're going to hear are so many stories of people who didn't have big audiences. In fact, when they started, had zero, but they managed to get an audience of a few hundred people, like Nicholas Wilton, for example. So Nicholas Wilton, when he launched his membership site, it was a community for artists. He teaches artists how to paint more beautiful art. And so he launched his membership site to this small community of 200 people. And the beauty about a small community is you're able to develop a much deeper, more intimate relationship with them. And so what we see all the time is much, much higher conversions from people who are launching their membership sites to these small communities because they've got a much deeper relationship with them. So he launched his community to 200 people. Over 180 of them signed up in month one. At $30 a month. That was like $5,400 a month right out of the gate. Another example, like Jonathan Milligan, he launched his to his email list of 659 people. And his goal was to generate $1,000 a month in recurring revenue. Yeah. So the way he broke that down was 50 members at $20 a month. So he did a webinar and he invited his list. Of the 650, he had 49 who registered for the webinar. He had 23 that showed up. Of the 23 that were on, 19 of them signed up for the membership. So then he sent an email to the rest of the 600 plus people on his list and said 19 of the 50 spots are spoken for. And within one email, he filled up the rest of the 50 spots. Goodness. And there are so many examples of it. Wendy Batten, she launched her membership site recently. And again, it was to a Facebook audience of 450, for hers was I think it was like 457 people in her Facebook audience in a Facebook group. And she launched it. She had 59 members join hers, generating $2,800 a month in recurring revenue. Wow. So the bottom line is this, like, whether you have no audience, a big audience, or somewhere in between, you can do this. And you can do it when you've got the right strategy and the right framework. And that's exactly what we're going to give you in the workshop. And this is why I'm so excited about it, because I love sharing these stories.
Yeah. And I might add, and the right coach, which is you, Stu. So,
Thank you.
Definitely check out the links. Get signed up for the workshop, like right away. Even if it's before March 15th, like get your name on that list so you're getting all the information. He, of course, Stu already spoils you. He sends you stuff ahead of time. That's just his nature. And let this be the year that you start your own tribe and serve them deeply in a way that's going to make a legacy impact for you. Stu, it's been amazing having you on the podcast today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm excited for your audience. You know, it's a great time. There has never been a better time than now. And during the free workshop, we're going to show you how to do it, and we're going to share all kinds of examples of others who are doing it to give you all kinds of play-by-plays and inspiration and motivation for you doing it in your market too.
Love it. I love it. All right. Click the link down below. Go get signed up. And you guys just make this the best year ever, because you have a platform to be able to serve your tribe with. Thanks again, Stu.
Thank you.